Hi, I'm Jonathan Mamaril. I'm here today again for another HR Engage podcast. And today we have Sonya Law. Sonya, how you going?
Good, really well. Thanks for having me.
Sonya, very excited to have you on board here for the HR Engage podcast. We've been talking a while about getting on this podcast, so I'm very excited. Now, look, I can go through your extensive background, what you've been up to, but let's get the viewers and also the listeners at home, let them hear from you about yourself. And so tell me about yourself.
Yeah, certainly. So, born in New Zealand, so I'm a Kiwi, and so that's my origin story. And been living in Melbourne, Australia, for most of my life. And three kids, married, all of that. And now they're all grown up and left home, so we're empty nesters. So
Yes.
yes, where I find myself, my career now is definitely HR. It
Yep.
was always going to be from a very young age, I think. But I started out in recruitment, which is not probably typical for most HR people.
Yep.
And now sort of in the leadership roles in HR.
Your journey into HR, there's been a few things that you've done along the way to get to your role right now, and your focus has really been on leadership, like leadership in HR has been sort of your focus. So could you give us a little bit of a rundown of your journey into human resources?
Yeah, certainly. So from a really young age, I had this sense of sort of fairness of what's right or wrong, or certainly, with my lens, and wanting to help people.
Yeah.
And notice that people responded very well to me from a young age. So I think that's where I sort of discovered I need to use, I've got some people skills, and I think that's actually a really important part of HR, because you can be very technical, but I think being approachable and having really good people skills is, particularly if you're early in your career and you're not sure what to do, if that's your strength, then it's really important to pursue it. So I actually started out in a degree studying IT, computer programming and accounting. And the
Wow.
dean said to me, I do not know why you're doing IT and accounting, Sonya. Like, you're such a people person. But I'm really quite technical in some ways. I like maths. So, I was hanging out with the programmers.
Yeah.
Actually, like, they don't talk. No offense to programmers, but so from there I actually changed about halfway through my degree to like HR commerce.
Okay.
So I went for an interview, and I really encourage young people to do this for just getting some admin work while I was studying.
Uh-huh.
And actually picked up a job that way as a recruiter. They said, once you finish your HR degree, why don't you come work for us?
Wow.
And that's really how my career's gone. I haven't really applied for jobs. I've
Yeah.
more been approached, which is good.
That's amazing, Sonia. So this whole idea that you've started in IT, like doing an IT degree, actually enjoy maths, which complete opposite to me, and you've then said, okay, well, someone's actually sort of give you some guidance and said, hey, maybe try something different. You've gone into HR, but not only that, you've been proactive. So I suppose there's always just been this tension, because human resources is probably a relatively new, when I say relatively new, comparatively relatively new in terms of formal qualifications, of getting formal
Yes.
qualifications to do HR. And there's quite a lot of people that don't have necessarily, or at least didn't start off with formal qualifications. Do you think that's helped you having that degree and going through that process?
Yeah, look, I think it has, because you learn the different areas of remuneration and benefits,
Yep.
staffing organisations, learning and development, industrial relations, employee relations.
Yep.
You get a really good foundation, and that's probably more a personal thing, in that you work out for yourself where your passions lie. So I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes when you start down the L&D path, that's where you kind of finish. But I feel like when you do that formal qualification, you get some insight into, the different career paths you can take, and you're more in control of directing your own career once you sort of work that out. Otherwise it will be taken out of your hands. So I did actually like that. But I'd say I'm a really strong generalist. Like, I always looked up to leaders who knew a bit about everything.
Yeah.
So technically they could problem solve, and also risk mitigation as well. And that's probably extended to also not just being HR, but being more business partner, more operational, more
Mm.
understanding of the strategic direction of the business. I think when you can also take it up a level and actually be involved in the strategic side is really good for HR.
Do you think that's important, that having that real understanding or true understanding of the strategy of the company and the operations of the company? Or do you see HR as a much more separate division or separate team in on itself?
Yeah, I think, look, it's fine if it's separate, if
Mm.
it's bolted on and you're working within your specialization. But I think just for me, it's more interesting when you're understanding the direction of the business and what are their priorities, so you can align your priorities with them.
Yeah.
And then you're more likely to get uptake of what you're suggesting. And materially, it's going to actually have a financial impact as
Yeah.
well, because sometimes with HR, it's hard to measure, but I like to have metrics and, look at things like staff turnover,
Yeah.
attrition, and also revenue per head count, efficiencies, utilization. And then once you're in that space, yeah, you've got a bit of a dashboard of how effective it is, what you're actually doing. And then you can make data-driven, pragmatic decisions that actually, measure.
You talk about that sort of data driven and more pragmatic ways of making decisions. Did you formulate that through, like, how did you formulate that thinking throughout your career?
Yeah, I think, what you measure becomes your focus,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see if you're improving or not. And if you're
Mm.
not, then you might include some strategies to course correct. So, yeah, it's just a really good measure of, I like to make a difference. Yeah, a bit of a sort of results orientated, sort of very, very focused on goals. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's, rewarding.
Talking about your human resource career, so did you always only have HR roles? Like you said that, you're always approached for roles. So you started that sort of recruitment side of things. What happened from there?
Yeah, so went from that to sort of HR coordination at a water utility. And then I started to develop also expertise around candidate care when it was a talent short market. I was in
Okay.
pharmaceuticals, and then more HR generalist sort of positions. And then, got my break as a HR director in mining for, 10 years almost. And, really enjoyed that because it's a matrix organization where you report offshore and you're
Yeah.
responsible for the country and the performance. And yeah, that was probably my favorite. It was in mining.
From there, did you end up going in a different direction, or did you stay on in sort of the HR side, or what you do there?
Yeah, I think, if you're looking at sort of side steps, it's okay to do a bit of a
Mm.
sidestep. I was a kinder teacher while I was on mat leave. So
Oh,
that's,
wow.
you probably know that. So no, I went back to uni because I was up at night. So I thought, oh,
Yes.
I'll do a degree in teaching and chose early childhood.
Wow.
And yeah, went back to uni. I started working as a kindergarten teacher just for the time I was off, for only
Yeah.
a short period. But I guess it did stem from HR, as understand the formulation of the personality and behaviors, and at what age does it become really hard to change behaviors, and why is that? And I guess it's really relevant now because lived experience is just starting to be talked about
Yes.
when we're looking at change management, transformation. A lot of it is around behaviors. So there's attachment theory, and attachment theory is around people who've their early years haven't attached well to their parents or caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And this can play out in behaviors adulthood, which, you can not a psychologist, but you can sort of start to understand that there's reasons behind why people behave the way that they do. And so what that does is it's less of the disciplining of
Yep.
people, and it's more of the let's try and sort of unpack this, understand this behavior, and even coach them to understand it for themselves in case they're going to some self sort of sabotage. So
Yep.
you can really be at the forefront when you understand why people do what they do, and actually getting a better outcome and result for the business. And particularly if they're in really key leadership roles that might be blocking change and transformation, if you can go some way to alleviate that, it's really powerful in an organization. So those early years of understanding people and the psychology and being a kinder teacher actually has helped me.
Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you comparing kindy kids to people at the workplace?
Yeah, well, actually, at the boardroom, there's some behaviours that were very similar board level as you'd see in the sandpit.
You see the similarities in behavior, or at least some of
Their
them.
words and
Yeah, wow. Wow. You heard
and
here.
in fact, they said that's why one of the reasons they hired me. That's like, oh wow, we're seeing some really interesting behaviours at board level. You used to be a kinder teacher, so clearly you can
Very
handle
similar.
this.
Same saying, really.
Yeah, so it plays out, right? They become really high achievers, but they can be blockers.
Mm. Wow. I mean, it's such an interesting journey you've had, and also, sidestepping into something
Mm,
completely different has helped you going forward into your career. There's a lot of, I suppose, I would call early career HR professionals listening
yeah,
to this podcast, or
yes.
watching this video. Do you think, from their perspective, and even potentially people who are quite experienced in HR, do you think doing a bit of a sidestep or doing something a little bit different,
Yes.
maybe not becoming a kindy teacher, but doing something a
Yeah.
little bit different,
Yeah.
do you think it helps with your future career, or at least getting a different perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you just a more well-rounded person.
Mm,
And when we try new things, it brings us closer to who we are,
mm,
and what we enjoy, and also our values as well, because they carry through no matter what job that we do. So often HR is very complex. People are complex. So yeah, anything you can do to travel, or do some volunteering, or to do a different job, or get on a board, or anything like that is always going to help you be more well-rounded, for sure.
And I think having more well-rounded professionals in HR is just going to lift the standard completely across the board, won't it?
Yeah, because it's a people business. And
Mm,
first of all, we kind of need to work on ourselves.
yeah,
We can't just be in this position and we're rolling everything out with not contextually thinking about, people at different life stages. It develops maturity when we
yep.
try new things, and we might fail at that, but we will learn a lot through that. So it's just having that constant growth mindset, that open mindset, and along with that, asking for feedback and, going off track. Going off track, we learn the most actually. It's not a negative. It's a really positive thing. And being able to explain that in interviews, why you did what you did and what you learned, and how they'll, how that will help you in the job is really important. It separates you from others, and how you've been resilient, how you've coped with adversity, how you've learned
Yep.
something new, how you've adapted, because really adaptability is core. You can have all the artificial intelligence in the world, but if you don't have social intelligence, emotional intelligence, adaptability, growth mindset, then you're really on a slippery slope of being replaced by a computer.
Yep. 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 Yep.
So critical thinking is all stems from this. And it's when I did my MBA 2018, it would have been now, critical thinking, innovation, all rides on this type of mindset and, approach, to life. But at the same time, when you face challenges, it's being able to stay with the uncomfortable as well,
Yeah.
being able to take risks. I think so often when you are young and starting an early career, you maybe think you're taking the wrong direction, and it can be quick to change, and that's okay. But at the same time, we grow when things are uncomfortable, and we kind of need to grow through that in order to advance ourselves. Yeah, it really helps. And I guess for experienced HR people, what I notice is their vulnerability, and they remember where they've started and
Yep.
how they've got to be where they are today. And they're usually very quick to share, how they got to where they are. I remember looking up to HR leaders and thinking, oh my God, I'll never be like that one day. Like, they just know what to say. They just know what to do. And there's because no book, for this. It's a lot of it's judgment and experience. And when you're on the opposite end and you don't have that, it's actually really hard. So it does come with time and being around good leaders. And being just a lifelong learner is really important in HR. I don't feel like I ever know it. I feel like I'm always learning every day on the job, So yeah, it might appear I do, really.
It sounds like you've got, some clear views on human resources. And, can you get this even just from this, like this, we can sort of really get that passion that you have, the enjoyment you have for human resources. Why are you passionate about it?
Yeah, I mean, sounds a bit cliche, but I love people. I think they're so interesting, and I love seeing them grow and develop beyond what they think is possible and unlocking that potential so they can live their best life. And it feeds other parts of their life. So I think it's just a genuine desire and passion to see people move forward and do well. That's extremely rewarding. Yeah, I think that's probably quite simply it. I just like helping people.
Human resources is an area, obviously the centerpiece of this HR Engage podcast. Talking to so many people that they probably have very different views on human resource, some trends as well. Some
Yes.
are very similar. I suppose there's quite a number of people listening to this who are experienced professionals or part of a very experienced HR teams. What are the two big pieces of advice you would have for any person in HR or is currently in HR?
Yeah, I think self-care. I think to be sustainable in this profession is to look after oneself. So your own well-being. I'm a huge advocate for moving the body, eating well, sleeping well, and just keeping yourself in the best condition possible because you can't perform from an empty cup. It's just in HR, it's very complex, it's very demanding, really important that we have that self-care would be one. I think the other one is it's probably a bit old school to hold yourself to high standards.
Okay.
So I don't ask anyone to do something don't do myself. So I hold myself to the highest of standards. However, I don't for other people. I will allow them a lot more room to move than I would myself. But I figure if I'm going to write a policy or, expect a behavior, then I better be doing it myself. And that's, integrity. And that was said to me by Antimony a lot of years ago at Southeast Water, a HR manager. She said, you got to live your values. And then everything will be kind of easy after that when it gets hard. Yeah, self-care and hold yourself to a high standard, your values, don't compromise them.
Both parts are can be sometimes difficult in any profession, but HR in particular has, because it's so people heavy, and I think a lot of roles deal with the negative. There are, of course, loads and loads of positives to this. Of course, there's no doubt about this. Is your feeling around those two pieces of advice, self-care and, keeping those standards high, or keeping, in some respects, it's both accountability and integrity, I suppose, is two. Do you think it also creates challenges for human resource professionals in their career? Because it's almost a bit counterintuitive. There's, you sort of trying to take care of yourself, but also keep the high standard. But at the same time, a lot's going on, lots of demands. It's not just the work, but it's family. And then on the other side of the flip of the coin is that you have all these people who are also, maybe competing for your time, your energy, in terms of, it could be, there's recruitment, but there's also employee relations, but there's also, if you're a pure generalist, there's all types of things going off all the time. Maybe it's very reactionary as well. Not a lot of proactivity. How do you discern that? How do you split that away from the advice you just give, and how do you split that away from all that, peel it away? How does it work, from I suppose, a practical level?
Yeah, from a practical level, I think it's developing some really good habits that set up
Mm.
the foundation. I'm up at 4:44 a.m., 5 a.m. I have my own personal time in the morning where I'm training for marathon, triathlon,
Yep.
and then I've got a group of people that I connect with that we never talk about work. We probably don't even know what each other does during the day, yet we've known each other for 10 plus years. It's like have a tribe outside of work, which disconnects you from your day to day job because we're not our occupation.
Mm.
We're much more than that. So I think at the foundation, good habits. I think when your values perhaps aren't aligned, you have to understand what that dissonance is.
Yeah.
And it does happen. Emotional and cognitive dissonance can make you very tired. So, when you may be going through a restructure and you haven't had
Mm.
a chance to process it and direct it, but you have to fulfill your duties,
Yes.
then that dissonance may mean that you're probably more tired than usual and you just have to, more self care. Go
Yeah.
gentle, be patient with yourself. Because when you give yourself permission to do that, then you're less hard on others. So sometimes we're under a lot of pressure and stress that can come out in unhelpful behaviors that are
Yep.
not consciously living, and they can have a big impact to transformation and change, particularly when you're doing the big stuff. And a lot of it you have to be confidential as well. So
Yeah.
it's being able to really have good self-awareness of where you're at, because otherwise we get very caught up in that sort of operational busyness and we can burn out actually. And we
Yeah.
have to think about our energy in terms of not being too high, not being too low,
Yep.
but just kind of being just right in the middle.
Yes.
Because we are the thermometer for the business, for the culture. People do look
Wow.
to us to see how we are acting and behaving, and it's a felt thing as well. It's not just a spoken thing, it's a felt thing. So we have to be very aware as custodians really for the culture of where we're kind of at. So at the foundation, it's having good habits that set you
Mhm.
up for success, and then just being really aware of where that dissonance is for you and where you are in your energy levels, what you're managing, what you've got on your plate, and making sure you have strategies in place to make sure that you're just being consistent. Because people really look for consistency in leadership, and being able to kind of buffer that stress and pressure for them. And if you really want to take it to the next level, and that's probably something I've learned in later life, is not to rush in and fix things and have all the answers. It's actually to use your village, whether it be at home or at work, to navigate these things and really empower and coach. So a lot of time I sit back and I'm not the advice monster. I just say, what would you do if you were me, and really ask that of them, and it's kind of it shifts things, for you. I mean, I encourage people to try your early part
Right.
of your career, more advanced in your career, sit back. What advice would you give me if I was in your position? It's really awesome. I highly recommend.
That's a good one. That is a really good one. You talk about HR being the custodians of culture and the thermometer, basically, of the
Mm.
business or the organization you're with. What are the biggest challenges you are facing now in human resources and how are you tackling it?
Yeah, so HR is quite new to where I'm working currently.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I just baseline want everyone to have a very positive experience of HR, because they may have come in with preconceived experiences from other
Yep.
organizations or from their partners, so forth. So that's the first thing. And to be really approachable. So for me, the challenge is, just making sure that people have a good positive experience. I don't have, aspirations above that,
Yes.
because it's so new. But I know every day anything that I do is going to improve the employee experience. I'm very focused on employee experience. And the other thing I want to tackle is retention,
Mm-hmm.
because the Australian Human Resource Institute said it's going up to from 12 to 16% this year.
Yeah.
So that should be a focus. So working on the employee value proposition based on the employee survey to have a one-pager value statement. So people who are currently in the organisation know what that is, but also in attracting new talent. So, yeah.
The retention is obviously a key issue that's been having to be dealt with for many years, actually, for
Yes.
quite a long time. And recruitment is probably the other part. The recruitment and retention are probably the two biggest biggest pieces at the moment, or the biggest challenges. I just wanted to just go back just a tad bit, because you said that you've almost started with a bit of a clean slate, where you
Yes.
currently are with the challenges. Do you see other big challenges in human resource in general that you think, look, it's on the horizon? Now, we've talked about retention being one, recruitment being one. Do you think that any other things that might be on the horizon that you see human resources will have to deal with going forward?
Yeah, I think, as you know, the complexity around employee relations
Mm,
definitely exists.
yep.
And I think as a society, we're changing as well. So I think for HR, it's keeping pace. So I think it's really being curious about what those societal changes are,
Yep.
and how that affects people and how
Yep.
that might play out in the workplace. And really staying current with that is really important. And that's where sort of, yeah, like I said, going back a step of, I don't need to know everything. In fact, I like it when someone is disagreeing with me or they've got a different opinion, because I really lean into that, because I'm like super curious then. I'm like, oh wow, like tell me more about that. Then I'll go off and Google or read a book or
Yep.
something, or look for a thought leader in neurodiversity, let's say, and really understand it more. What are the challenges? And I think in a lot of ways, law is really an outcome of how society's changing.
Yep.
And it's almost that resistance and tension that's occurring in people's experience within the
Mm,
workplace. And then as HR, we need to stay up to date with that, so that we create an environment that doesn't brush up against people's, experience and become legislative, and then you have a lot of action. So I think that's the thing you've really got to understand. So what the changes are in society more broader, because they're people. So it plays out here.
You've got also got I would say quite a lot of experience as a host or MC speaker for a number of HR summits, and you've done that for many years now. And it's actually fantastic to actually see you up there on stage. But you must get so many different views, different opinions, just because you're at these summits. You're talking to so many people. You see a lot of speakers, I assume, as well. I want to go to your views though. What's the one thing about human resources that people might disagree with you about?
Yeah, I still think well-being, as much
Mm,
as we talk about mental health more, I think well-being is still something that's a nice to have.
mm, yep.
You know, since COVID, mental health has definitely, been highlighted, and it's really important. And, I get that. But I feel like well-being's still being a bit shelved. People might disagree with that and say, well, actually, it's still at the forefront of HR, but I actually think it's dropped off. Yeah,
Okay.
that's not given the focus that it needs. It's a bit of a tick the box exercise.
Mm,
It's not really being driven in an authentic way to really give the people what they want in order to live a healthy life. So, yeah, I'm not sure it's that controversial. It's probably just something I want to highlight, because well-being is really important to me and something I champion. But I think it's really important. It firmly is part of HR. And in the HR Summit, day 2 is all about well-being.
yeah.
So, if we're talking about it at the highest level at HR Summit, I'm not necessarily seeing that replicated within HR.
Hate within HR, because you have essentially some forced compliance, especially in the health and safety side with
Yes.
psychosocial risks and hazards.
Yep.
You definitely have this boil over from COVID for sure.
Yes.
It would seem, from what you're thinking, what you're saying is that, yep, that's definitely been done, or at least there's a reaction to it, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because it's more obvious. It's in your face, and you're told to comply, and you need to comply. And it might even be forced compliance from a
Yes.
tender perspective, or it could
Spot
be
on.
that you need to have these in place. What you're saying is that's like the essentially the basics, or
Yeah.
what you have to do.
Yes.
What you're saying is going beyond that.
Yes.
It's not really. It's still a nice to have. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We do it at compliance level,
Yes.
but yeah, really to get high performance teamwork and
Uh-huh.
people, then you have to offer more in the wellbeing space. But really, that needs to come from them. So it's being
Yeah.
able to survey them, find out what's important to them, and then also having a committee which champions it with people from different parts of the business that drive it through. Otherwise, it becomes a bit of a, nice to have, but doesn't really happen. Because if
Yeah.
people are happy and healthy, and that can mean different things to different people.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be
Yes.
at my level. It
Yep.
could just be eating away from their desk,
Yep.
but it's encouraged in the workplace. So that to them could be a life changer. Reading their book, whatever it is, we need to think more about how we can, improve the experience of people at work, and then that way too, you don't have so many people working from home. Like, you can have more people in the office and they're enjoying being around each other, and that has really good social and well-being, benefits. So yeah, it's really important. I want to sort of bring that into the focus.
Yep. Yeah. That
Dropped
makes.
off here, it used to
Yeah.
be have a personal trainer and,
Yep.
but yeah, have something like volunteer leave or anything could be.
I think when you go to these HR summits, there's a lot of discussed about employee well-being. I mean, that is
Yes.
a big topic of discussion. As you said, day two is essentially about employee well-being from different aspects.
Yes.
Sure. In,
I mean,
in
we
your
even had equine therapy at the
Yeah,
City
that's
HR Summit,
right.
right? Like, I thought
Um,
that was fantastic. It's really groundbreaking.
in your view, is there a reason why employee well-being, or well-being in general, but I think employee well-being more so? So I think well-being in general, yes, there is. It's probably not enough, but I think there is enough out there where people are going, I do need to do something.
Yeah.
They might not do it, but there's at least that sort of thinking, like, I need to do something, a bit of movement, bit of, should eat well,
Yes.
or, go run around the park or something. Like, there's always a
Yeah.
thinking at least, and I think you still have, you have loads of reality TV and TV shows that sort of pump that agenda a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
there's a bit out there. With employee well-being, do you think there's a reason why it hasn't flown on? Because it makes a lot of sense. But do you
Yes.
think there's a reason why it hasn't flown through as much in organizations? It's not as natural to flow through in a workplace. What do you think there's a natural pushback?
Yeah, I think it's still the old 9 to 5 job, working
Yeah.
hours and the bottom line impact, and not really understanding the link between a healthy lifestyle and performance, which is a passion of mine because I'm always studying high performance in sports and teams.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's always the link is the well-being. Definitely. And also for good mental health as well. You know yourself, if you've done something for yourself, that you're going to start that day a lot better and you're going to have better interactions and you're going to benefit from that, when you reflect back on your day. So that's your experience will be very different depending on whether you have those habits in place. And if it's and the organization, there's a disconnect sometimes because we're just looking at hours worked, utilization, bottom line impact, not really understanding how that can benefit productivity, performance, and financials as well.
Yeah, that I think there's still a lot to go in that space.
Yes.
And look, but in saying that there's a lot of businesses in that industry as well, really
Yes.
pushing an employee wellbeing agenda. Just looking at it though, generally, there seems to be this natural pushback. But I'd also think the way it's been promoted is potentially not.
Yes.
I'm not sophisticated, maybe not the right word, but maybe
Yeah.
not at the level where everything else is. When you look at, say, health and safety, or when you look at
Yes.
even mental health, there are
Definitely.
pretty high levels of promotion, marketing,
Absolutely.
development, even the data that they bring out. Like, it's pretty high level stuff. But when you look at
Absolutely.
employee well-being, it seems to be more not as
Like,
sophisticated
you
in
should
the.
do that at home,
Yeah, it seems to
train
be
your partner.
very almost, the message is not quite clear. It's
Yeah.
not a clear message. Do you think that plays a part in how that hasn't been quite received yet, or not well received?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just not, there's an opportunity there really
Mm.
for an organization probably Swedish, I don't know, US company to come in and revolutionize, the way we see well-being. Because as a society, it's sort of, it's not prioritized within work hours, I would say.
Now, I
It's
want to
up to,
change track a little bit because we have this tradition, HR Engage podcast, ask what we call rapid fire questions. So
love it.
basically, I'm going to ask you 12 questions. You just answer the first thing that sort of comes to your head. Okay?
Okay.
Cool. All right. First question is, what is your favorite movie?
Castle. The Castle.
Oh, yes. Yes, the vibe, right? The vibe is what you talk about. Yeah. Great. Favorite holiday destination?
Beach.
Any beach?
Anywhere. Yeah, beach. Just a beach.
Just the beach. Doesn't matter where.
Doesn't matter where.
There are some beaches that are better than some. Apart from family and friends, who's inspired you the most?
I'd say it's Gandhi and Gandhi, Dalai Lama, Yanaben, and Princess Di. Intelligence, empathy, compassion.
Intelligence, empathy, compassion.
Yes.
What's the one thing, I think I already know this thing, but what is the thing you do outside of work you're passionate about or keeps you going?
Yeah, definitely moving the body. For
Yeah,
sure.
moving the body. Yep.
I've done New York, Berlin, a Chicago marathon.
Yep.
And we'll do all of them. Yeah. The world majors they're called, and coach and do triathlon. Yeah, for a group of people.
Yes. And do you have one coming up?
Sunday.
What's that one?
2 times U in Sandringham, Brent triathlon. And then the Saturday I'll do a club to club swim, which is 1.8 open water. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Tell us something about yourself that people don't know about you.
I don't know about me. Kinder teacher. Oh, no, I've already spoke about it.
That's right. Yep. No, that I didn't know that. Yeah.
If employees, they bring in their kids here, I give them a present and we'll play a game with them or something. Yeah. Always, they're like, how do you have all these presents for kids? I'm like, I've got like a drawer of them because I love kids.
That's brilliant. That's excellent. Now, just some closing questions. We could, just before you go, because I just love this conversation. If you could recommend a book, movie, TV show, or podcast to listeners, what would it be and why?
Yeah, I think Ikigai, it's a good book for all stages and ages to really understand your values, your purpose, and your vision. Yeah, Ikigai, Ikiga. So
that's a good recommendation. I haven't checked that out, so actually I might check that out myself. That's a good one. Yeah. And is there a quote?
Give me your address and I'll send one to you.
Okay, excellent. I knew this HR Engage podcast will get some benefits as well. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a quote or a moment of inspiration you would like to leave us with?
Progress over perfection. I used to be very perfectionistic. Now I just go for progress. And second thing would be to flow, don't force. There's a great book called Optimal, which is written by Daniel Goleman. It's about being in a flow state. And it's highly recommend it. It's really good.
That's excellent. Look, today's been really good because that whole idea that HR are the custodians of culture, that the thermometer of the business. Your thoughts, real passionate thoughts on well-being, and that sort of stems from your values and also your thoughts on making sure that there are high having the self-care part of it, and also those higher standards, keeping us at the higher standards, which also flow through to people in the organization. I think that's a really, really, really good point to get across as well. It's been fantastic having you on the HR Engage podcast. I think the listeners here will listen. They will listen and got so much out of it. Sonya, you're also quite engaged with the HR Summit. You're on LinkedIn quite a lot, and you've got some great content. So it'd be great to continue to. So for those who are interested, go along and follow Sonya as well, because she's fantastic on LinkedIn. Some great stuff, and I'm sure you're going to see her at a HR summit or two when you go to them as well. So Sonya, it's been fantastic having you on the HR Engage podcast. Thank you so much.
So welcome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, it's Jonathan Mamaril here at the HR Engage podcast. Speak soon.